going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Saturday, and a bit of a Manchester United news update as we are still in the international break. Oh, I tell you what, these international breaks, it's funny how they work, isn't it? Because sometimes when they come along, you're sort of maybe a little bit fatigued with football, or particularly when the games are sort of thick and fast, you go, oh, maybe it's not a bad thing, especially if your team's not doing very well. You go, oh, thank God for the international break. But then once you're in it, I mean, we're a week in. It was a week ago today that Scott McTominay scored the last minute winner, the 2 goals in injury time against Brentford, and we were all celebrating, and for 90 minutes of the game we were all going, this is rubbish, and then McTominay scores and we're all happy even though the team didn't play particularly well. And then 7 days later, I don't know what to do with myself. England played last night. It was boring. It was, it's international football. It's not for me. But nevertheless, while this is going on, there's still some quite interesting stories going on in the world of Manchester United. So I'm going to give you a bit of a Manchester United news update on a Saturday afternoon. So I hope everyone's doing well. Click the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Remember, you can join the UV Members Club too. Links in the video description. It's going to also be the pinned comment on this premiere for you. So we've got quite a bit to talk about, as I mentioned. Harry Maguire, an update on his future amid all of the conversations and things he's been saying to the media or the interviews he's been doing. There's been a bit more speculation about his future come January when it comes to a possible move to West Ham once again, possibly the Hammers reigniting their interest in the England and United centre-back. Also an interesting story on Mitchell van der Gaag and possibly a return to Ajax for him, but this time in the head coach/manager position. We'll let you know about that. Also, Manchester United have launched an investigation. Yes, a game of Cluedo to see what's behind all of the injuries we've had this season. Is it going to be Colonel Mustard with the lead pipe in the library that's been behind all of these injuries for United? I don't know, but we'll talk to you a little bit about that investigation. A bit more of an update on Andre Onana amid his difficult start to his life at Manchester United. The mistakes, the pressure, the scrutiny, how United are seemingly trying to help him overcome these problems, as well as Erik ten Hag's openness to make a change in the goalkeeping position too. And United are set to overhaul the scouting department as well. So quite a lot actually going on, sort of these smaller developing stories that could actually lead into something bigger. Let's start off talking about Harry Maguire, because it's being reported by James Olley from ESPN that West Ham are considering a fresh approach for Harry Maguire in January should his lack of game time continue at Manchester United. Now, this one to me was quite interesting because when I saw this, I thought the reason that West Ham were interested in signing Harry Maguire in the summer is because they were in the market for a centre-back. And of course, once the Harry Maguire deal fell apart, didn't happen, depending on how you want to look at it. I know that Harry Maguire said in the media this week that actually the two clubs never agreed a deal, so it was never really a case of him talking to West Ham or turning down David Moyes or anything like that. Well, of course, in the end, West Ham signed Konstantinos Mavropanos, who has actually only played like 2 games for West Ham. Now, I'm not a West Ham fan, so I don't really know the particulars behind that. I know that it's October and he's played like 2 games, whether that's because of injury, whether that's because of quality. So you could argue so far, it's early stages for him, but maybe it's not really working out that much at West Ham. Therefore, there's a possibility that West Ham are still in the market for a centre-back. And I think if the caveat to this one is that they'll go back in for Harry Maguire if his lack of game time continues at Manchester United, then it's near enough a certainty to say that they'll go back in for Harry Maguire in January. Because, I mean, look, he might play more games between now and January, but that's not because he's the first choice at Manchester United. It must be stressed. The reason that Harry Maguire's game time has increased a little bit in recent weeks is because of a injury crisis in defence for United. I mean, we mentioned it the other day. Manchester United's best back four is not available at the moment through injury. We're not talking about one full-back being injured. We're not talking about one centre-back. We're not talking about half the defence being injured. We're talking about our best back four. We cannot select them because they're all injured. In addition to several backup options that are also injured as well. Our best back four, you can disagree with this. You can let me know if you disagree in the comment section below. I'm sure you will. Luke Shaw, number 1 left back. Varane, Martinez, the starting centre-backs. Right back, it's up for debate, but you could probably say Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I would lean into Aaron Wan-Bissaka being our best right back at the moment. And I think we can do better, by the way. But still, that's our best back four. None of them are available through injury. And, they go, Varane expected to be back, after the international break sorted, he'll be back, so he'll be playing. Shaw, again, that's a bit longer. Wan-Bissaka, hopefully soon. we don't know. Martinez, we know that's a long-term one because of his foot issue once again. So realistically, that's the reason that Harry Maguire's, been able to jump into the side. And even with all that going on, there's an argument to be made too that he's only really getting in the team again because of the other injuries. It's not as if it's just the entire back four is injured, so he's getting in. It's, actually, he was still on the bench because, Lindelof, when it was just three out of the back four and Varane was playing, Maguire's on the bench. But because of the fullback situation, having three left backs out with injury, in short, Malacia, Regulion, bruv, as KG would say, Regulon. Then because of that, they had to move Dalot to left back and Lindelof to right back, and then that allowed Harry Maguire to come in. So my long-winded point here is that I don't think that Harry Maguire's game time will continue, but not because he's rising up the ranks. He had a good game against Brentford, and I will credit him for that. But I think if it's lulled him into a false sense of reality that he's now back up the pecking order at Manchester United, I don't think that's the case. I think if all of our defenders would fit, he would still be in the same position that he's been for the majority of his time under Erik ten Hag, which would be on the bench. And he said the other day in the media that he's not going to sit on the bench and play once a month for the rest of his career, the rest of his life. And if he's serious about that, then maybe he has those discussions with West Ham in January. So that's certainly one to watch. And look, in the summer, clearly we were going for Pavard, then we were linked to, obviously, to Debo, and I think that United would be looking at Harry Maguire and saying, hey, if we can get rid of him in January, we can bring in some good money, let's say it's £30 million, something like that, then we can go back into the market and go for a Todibo. Looks like he's the one that United want to replace Harry Maguire with, and also want to build upon and maybe become a regular starter alongside Alessandro Martinez, as maybe Rafael Varane's, gradually gets phased out over the next sort of 18 months or so, particularly given his injury record at the moment. So let me know your thoughts about that one when it comes to Harry Maguire, possibly West Ham being interested in signing him again in January. Do you think this one's possible, or do you think it's just a case, and I think this one must be sort of pointed out here with Harry Maguire, do you think it's also just a case of, hey, he's in the media at the moment, he's been doing interviews, people are actively searching for Maguire, it's an easy story to do? That could be part of it as well, so let me know your thoughts about that. Let's move on, talk about Mitchell van der Gaag. Now, lots of change going on at Ajax at the moment, because Ajax, if you're an Ajax fan, and in fairness, I do know that a lot of Ajax fans do watch United View and do watch Manchester United content because of the Erik ten Hag affiliation, and obviously ex-Ajax players being at the club as well. And we're sorry. we apologize because Manchester United, and look, it's not just Manchester United that, of course, Ajax's downfall in the last 18 months, but things are bad at Ajax at the moment. Things are really, really bad. Where are they? Like third bottom in the Eredivisie. Obviously, there was a situation against Feyenoord in the derby a few weeks ago, the game getting cancelled. I think the director of football, technical director, whatever his title is, obviously has been sacked. I think there's like an investigation by a forensic accountant into Ajax at the moment. It's just a giant mess. The manager is under massive pressure, as you would be, when you're third in the table. So the point being is that there's a lot of overhaul going on at Ajax at the moment. Now, Louis van Gaal at one point was linked to become the Ajax manager once again, and he said, no, look, I'm not interested. I'm too old. I'm not interested in going into club management again. I'd do an international job maybe. But even when he was the Netherlands manager at the last World Cup, he kind of come out of retirement to do that role, and he did a very good job. Louis van Gaal, international level in a tournament, is excellent. But he's gone back to Ajax to work as an advisor on a sort of technical board side of things. And according to The Athletic, and also according, it must be pointed out, to reports in the Netherlands as well, I think it was the Telegraph in the Netherlands, they suggested that Ajax advisor Louis van Gaal would recommend Ajax move for Mitchell van der Gaag if the current manager, Maurice Stegen, probably pronounced that wrong, is sacked. But they are aware that this task would be difficult. Now, it's quite interesting, actually, because when Erik ten Hag came over to Manchester United, unless I'm mistaken, I believe that one of the sort of candidates to succeed him at Ajax was Mitchell van der Gaag. He was one of the names under consideration. Of course, he came with ten Hag. They've worked together for a long, long time. They're kind of, inseparable. The bold connection there at United. Should United be worried about this one? Look, when you're it depends what your intentions are, obviously. When you're a number two, and you get an offer to become a manager, it's always very difficult to turn down, isn't it? It's always it's always and again, it depends what your ambitions are. There are some number twos that all they want is to be a manager. And Mitchell van der Gaag also, it must be pointed out, prior to working with Erik ten Hag at Ajax, he was a manager. He managed for the likes of Eindhoven, Excelsior, NAC, Young Ajax as well. It was only at Ajax, the first team under Erik ten Hag, as well as Manchester United, that he's been an assistant. So you could argue, certainly, look, there could be ambitions there to work as a manager in his own right. So that is something to consider. But it would be a mammoth task. But it's a big club. It's Ajax. For him to get the opportunity to work there as manager on Ajax, that would be very difficult to turn down. I think like I said, they're aware that would be difficult now. I think that, given Man United's situation as well, things not going particularly great at the moment, maybe he would be reluctant to sort of jump ship this quickly. And it might be a case of him going, well, I'd do it at the end of the season or something. But it's certainly one to keep an eye out for. Let me know in the comment section. Do you think that Mitchell van der Gaag could go to Ajax? Do you think that's a possibility? Look, at the moment it's very hypothetical because the manager hasn't been sacked, but it's certainly something to keep an eye out for. Whether or not it would make a big difference, I mean, these things you never know. Sometimes you can have like a Brian Clough situation where you never truly achieve the success without your number two. Or you can have a situation a bit like Jurgen Klopp. Remember when Jurgen Klopp's assistant left? It was before I think they had a Champions League semi-final, and they had the semi-final against Roma or something like that. And his assistant left. I forget his name, but he'd worked with him for years at Mainz and also Borussia Dortmund, and everyone said, this is the guy, he's the one, he's the brain. I think Klopp even called him the brain, and this is, it's not going to work out without him. And then they went on to win the Champions League, they went on to, win the league and had a ton of success. You look at Mikel Arteta, when at Man City, obviously he was Pep Guardiola's assistant. People wondered, was Pep going to be like without Arteta? Not that he hadn't been successful prior to having him as the assistant, but Arteta went to Arsenal, Pep's gone on to win the treble, and he goes through a lot of assistant managers. One of his assistants now the manager of Leicester. Sir Alex Ferguson went through a plethora of assistant managers, and they all went on to leave and not have maybe the best success elsewhere, came back. Whether it was Steve McLaren, had some obviously success at Middlesbrough, won the League Cup, or he had so many, Carlos Queiroz, Rennie Mullenstein, obviously Mike Phelan, Walter Smith, Brian Kidd. I mean, he had so many different assistants during his time. So you never know. Again, it depends what really the aspirations are of Mitchell van der Gaag, but certainly one to keep an eye out for with that. Injury investigation. United investigates. Yes, they're investigating what's going on with all of these injuries this season. This was a story that came from Mike Keegan, who said that Manchester United have launched an investigation into why they've had so many first-team injuries so far this season. United have had 16 absentees thus far in a variety of different positions. Officials from Manchester United's medical department are actively seeking if there are any patterns with these injuries. United officials are looking at whether the post-World Cup busy schedule has played a big role in the injuries. United played 41 games from the end of September to the end of the season, the same amount as Aston Villa and Brentford did the entire season. Yeah, that just goes to show that schedule is no joke, certainly. Now, it was pointed out that they'd played a similar amount of games to Man City, who had also had some injury troubles. I mean, United's injuries this season is somewhat unprecedented, isn't it? I mean, I mentioned that it's wild. And I don't want to lay all of the blame on United's misfortunes this season to the injuries, because I don't think it's any one thing. I think that, life's too complex and complicated just to say, it's just because of this. There are a variety of different issues at United. Takeover, player issues, with like the Sancho stuff. Probably interpersonal issues. Obviously, injuries are part of it as well. Tactics, maybe not the right signings, etc., etc. There are so many different things that lead into United being where they are on the pitch at the moment. But injuries, I do think, clearly have played a big part in that. I mean, I mentioned our entire back four is out with an injury. It is incredible that we signed Sergio Reguilon as an emergency left back because both of our left backs were out through long-term injuries and he got injured. Three senior left backs out of injury. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. Why is that the case? There's been a big conversation recently. I saw Virgil van Dijk doing media. He did a press conference while he was away with the Netherlands, talking once again about the workload and the intensity and the amount of games that footballers have to play at the moment, and the fact that it's ridiculous. And some of the pushback to that I find so bizarre. I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen those posts and tweets of people going, I work a 60-hour week and I've got kids and I go to the gym, or I play five-a-side football twice a week and you don't hear me complaining. If I was on this amount of money, I wouldn't be complaining. And then I say to myself, well, I don't think it matters how much money you're on. If you tore your ACL and your career was, you're worried about, if you're going to be playing football to the highest level that you were previously, or you're worried about whether you're going to win things, I think you'd be moaning. Or if you're absolutely exhausted and being running to the ground by playing games every 3 days, and you realize that some of those games are complete bullshit, and the reason you're having to play them is because people way above your pay grade, the people that, operate and run football, are just doing it because of special interests, money, and greedy people, and that don't care about your well-being, you'd be a little bit pissed off. I know I would. So I just think that's such a bad faith argument. Of course, the money's out of control in football, but also money doesn't buy happiness. Like that, isn't that like a fundamental knowledge? It's nice to have, obviously, but the idea that, well, if I was on that amount of money, and I wouldn't be complaining if I was playing three times in 7 days, but you probably would. You probably would. And again, I think that leaves a lot of logic out of the situation. And also, then you can't complain when all of your players are getting injured because they're playing too many games, especially when some of the games, as I mentioned, then there's no reason for them. Nations League, get rid of that. They're putting in a Club World Cup. Why? Wow, it's a trophy. No, it's not. It's about money. They just want to have more games, more people in the stadiums, more TV things to sell. Oh, we can put a game on. Why? Well, we can charge a lot from advertising revenue in the TV games. I saw a clip the other day, and it was a Joe Rogan clip, and it was one of these shorts. He gets stuck into sort of the cycle of watching shorts on YouTube or reels on Instagram or what have you. And he was talking about soccer, and he was saying that, the problem is that I find with soccer is there's not enough breaks. There's not enough breaks, There's not enough breaks for advertisements like in, the NFL or in other sports. We go to commercial break, and you can charge high. And that's what it's all about. It's all about money. And again, if it was me, if I was a guy that was, I'm exhausted, my body's breaking down because I'm playing so often. And again, people don't realize just because Virgil van Dijk's sitting there in the press conference doesn't mean he's 100% fit and healthy. I'm sure there are lots of issues he's probably dealing with, whether it's, his knees, his back, or his hamstrings, his quad. Who knows what these footballers go on the pitch with? They definitely don't go on the pitch 100%. And you're dealing with that and you're thinking, I'm here. Yeah, I'm getting paid. And yeah, I'm living the dream. And don't get me wrong, I know that's the case. But at the same time, I'm hurt. I'm injured. I want to achieve things. But I've got these people above me that are saying, play more games, play more games, play more games. And as a fan, look, it's great. Get to watch loads of football. And get to watch it on the TV. Get to go to grounds. Fantastic. But at the same time, again, it is crazy. And it's unnecessary. And that's part of it. So I do think footballers are playing too many games. But steering it back to United, because I've gone off on a big tangent there. Talking about United, obviously our schedule was intense, but I think also you could argue that the medical department has to have a massive look at themselves. I know we've got a new club doctor in, or head of sports science, medical science, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully that will help things. It would be interesting to know what results they find, because it feels like, when you get this level of injuries, that cannot be just a coincidence. There has to be something behind that one. And it'll be interesting to know what indeed that was. So let me know what you think they'll find. Let me know your thoughts about the too many games. Am I completely wrong here? Is it the case of, well, if I got the money, I'd be happy to play those games? Or, like, in my opinion, I think it's a bit of a bad faith argument to, say that, well, I do this and this and this in the week. Because I could say that. We work this amount of hours in the week, but I'm not naive enough to think I'm a elite level footballer or Virgil van Dijk or anything. But there you go. Andre Onana. Now, lots of people talking about Andre Onana. I was just watching, what's it called? Stick to Football. It's the new Overlap podcast with Gary Neville and Jill Scott, Roy Keane, Ian Wright, Jamie Carragher. It's a really good watch, actually. I'm quite enjoying those, so be sure to check those out. And they were talking a bit about Andre Onana and the mistakes thus far, the trouble setting, etc. And there's been quite a bit written about, obviously, him in general, but in the last sort of 24 hours regarding Erik ten Hag's viewpoint on it, what United are trying to do to help Onana settle in terms of adjusting to the Premier League, stop making mistakes, improve his games, as well as how open the United manager is to possibly playing our other keeper, Bayern Dier, instead of Andre Onana if his poor form continues. So Rob Dawson from ESPN has said that Erik ten Hag is open to making a change in goal if Andre Onana's form doesn't improve. Of course, Bayern Dier is an option. Tom Heaton, although, is he still dealing with an injury? Or is he back at this point? I'm not sure. But according to Rob Dawson, he also says that Manchester United are working with Andre Onana to help him better deal with errors when they come, as well as on the technical side of his game, including stabilising his feet more quickly to help with shots aimed low and in and around his body. Which is interesting that they would write that bit would be written regarding his diving technique and how he's dealing with shots in and around his body. Because that is one thing that has been very noticeable in these first few games of the season, is that his technique, but this is Andre Onana is 27 years old, and I do look at that and go, if we're sort of talking about fundamentals of goalkeeping, we're talking about planting your feet, moving your feet quickly, getting down, making sure you get your body behind the ball, strong hands, strong wrists. They're basics. Real basics. And there might be small things to tweak, but it's tough to change your technique, to modify your technique at 27 ain't easy. That ain't easy, because that's a lot of years of playing football. That's a lot of years of doing it a certain way. And I think, when they're talking about how, dealing with errors on in terms of a mentality thing, that can be coached. But the technical side of things, that's going to be very, very tough. But he does need to improve on it. I'm not a goalkeeping expert. That's the position I played, and played to a decent level. Being trials and getting into academies or what have you, or playing for a decent level anyway. And they always tell you about your footwork and your positioning and your technique of getting down to the ground, and it does just look off. It's looked off this season, as well as. For a goalkeeper that plays so far out and so high up when we're in possession, his starting position feels all wrong sometimes when he's one-on-one with a player. It's so easy to chip him, or he makes the decision for the striker but in a bad way. And they always say as a goalkeeper, try and make the mind up for the player, but not in the sense of, I'll just think it over you, no problem. So, obviously that's what they're there to do, goalkeeper coaches, is to work with the players, try and improve them. But I think the biggest thing out of it, realistically, is that Erik ten Hag would be open to a change, and if the problems continue, he's open to that. Now, that's one thing to write it; it's another thing to see it. But according to Rob Dawson as well, the Manchester United coaches have reminded Andre Onana to take up a more imposing stance when attackers are through one-on-one, as they see that as an issue. What he's shown so far at United's shirt. So again, which is basically what I just said, is that. It's almost like half committing. If a player comes through one-on-one, you make kind of two choices realistically as a goalkeeper. You rush out and you say, right, I'm just going to go flying out at them, and I'm going to say you've got to try and go around me, or I'm going to try and get the ball at your feet, or I'm going to come out so quickly they don't even have time to make their mind up. And if they hesitate, I'm going to either save it, or I'm going to get the ball. I'm just going to go make their decision up for them. Or I'm going to stay back. And I'm going to see if a player can come back. I'm going to say, you can't chip me. I'm going to give them too much time to think about it. And then they're going to be like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? If you go into that sort of no man's land, that sort of half, well, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. Like I said, then it just becomes easy. I'm like, I'll just think over you. Or I'll just put it past you. And they can feel it. They can sense, nervousness from a goalkeeper. And I think they're right in that analysis of, make your mind up, be imposing through one-on-one, because we're at the point at the moment where a player's through one-on-one, we're like, they're scored. It doesn't even matter. The goal was against Galatasaray, a great example of that, particularly the third one. It's just too easy. And as I mentioned, my concern is, they're sort of fundamentals of goalkeeping, and if you're learning them at 27, that's alarming. And we'll get into the scouting bit in just a second, but is that not something that the scouting department would have realised ahead of time? Is that not something Erik ten Hag would have realised ahead of time? I mean, is this a new thing to him? I mean, he's worked with him for several years at Ajax. Was this a problem then? Did he mention this to his goalkeeping coaches and scouts? Oh yeah, when we were at Ajax, this was a thing we had to improve on. Or is this a new thing? But it doesn't feel like it must have been a new thing. So I don't know. But I think most people would hope that it works out. But it feels like, doesn't it, that this season that's going to be one of these ongoing stories. And look, here's hoping he can turn it around. Finally, talking about the scouting department there, United having a bit of a scouting overhaul. This came from Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic, who writes that Manchester United have decided to make major changes to the scouting of both their youth and first teams. They are narrowing the scope of their head of academy recruitment to focus solely on domestic signings and bringing international youth talent spotters under a senior umbrella. Manchester United's new scouting process has split the globe into different sections, focusing on the top leagues in the European Union and the Americas. Groups of scouts will cover each area and report to a senior recruiter. So, I mean, it's good that they're overhauling it and it's much needed, but it makes you wonder how far behind, other teams are they with this? Because when you read that new information, to me, that feels like par for the course. Shouldn't that be there anyway? Shouldn't that be like that? But I nearly said the word that me and KJ said we weren't going to do, talent ID, but the talent identification of Manchester United does feel like it's been particularly poor. Particularly for, most people would know about those sort of bigger players across Europe. It's almost like you don't need to particularly scout them that much. But what United really don't do is sign those up-and-coming, man, I didn't hear of them, or we've got an eye on this person, or that player, we spotted them, or we can turn that player into something. It just feels like United just don't do that, and don't do it particularly well either. I mean, you look at people like Facundo Palestri and Ahmad, we're still talking about could they get in, are they good enough? And then, like when Facundo comes in, you go, still not ready just yet. Meanwhile, you look at a Brighton, every person they sign, you go, I have no idea who that is, but I know for a fact in 2 years he's going to be worth 100 million. And look, maybe the problem is that Manchester United isn't the right club for those kind of players because we won't play them anyway. And that's why they go to a Brighton. They go to a Brighton because they'll get game time, and they won't at United. I don't know. But it's the first in a positive step, but I think the scouting department certainly has a long way to go. But anyway, guys, there you go. Be sure to smash the like and the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As always, if any news breaks or develops, we'll be live or we'll do another video over the weekend and throughout this international break. Have a good weekend. Have a good Saturday. Full view tomorrow, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. I'm out of here. Peace.